Hello and welcome back to HassanSpeaks. Today in episode 3, we have a guest over here who's been an accomplished entrepreneur in the tech industry who took on the industry in very early stages of it. And I think there's a lot to learn from him and his success over the time. We'll be discussing him more, but without further ado, I will let him introduce himself. Mr. Abbas, how would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? The first thing that I kind of am just feeling right now is normally I'm sitting where you are and I'm on the opposite end this time around. So it's a little different being on this side. The view is nicer, I must say. How would I describe myself? Well, I would say that I'm carrying our family's legacy of entrepreneurship. I think there was a recent post that I saw that showcased our great-grandfather's trade license that is on display at the Dubai Museum.
Right.
So we've been into the space for generations, and I hope to sort of continue that along. I'm more of a techie myself. I've always loved tech since I was a kid. So just mixing those two together is what my passion is, and that led to the creation of my company called Tea Break Media.
Fantastic. So you're bringing whatever is in your blood back into action. Over the past, I think several decades ago, your grandfather was also part of early stages of business communities.
I
in
think
Dubai.
so. I think so. And I think one of the things or one of the drawbacks or disadvantages of doing that is I was just kind of remembering the things that I've done in the past 15 years, right? And it's so funny where I pointed 5 or 6 things that I've done that were so far ahead of when they should have been done that they didn't click at that time. So believe it or not, the first electric e-commerce store in the UAE, that was me. Shipped out a phone to Malaysia from here. I realized, I'm like, wait a
Wow.
minute, we're getting phones here. But e-commerce was very much at its basic stage. Video production. We used to do tons of video that was also going on YouTube about...
So this was back in late 90s,
This
early
was
2000s?
late 90s, absolutely. Again, YouTube wasn't what it is today.
Correct.
Podcasting, something that we're doing here, I've given that a shot as well. That was, again, almost 8 or 9 years ago that we were doing a series on Tea Break for podcasting.
Nice.
So I think one of the issues with me is not realizing the right timing for it. I kind of get excited about tech whenever I see it, and I kind of jump into it. Tech needs to mature a little bit, and I think that's the phase that we sort of need to always look at before doing something. Just a little bit of tip for
So
anyone.
you kind of got into the space in the times there was a dot-com bubble and there was a lot of skepticism around tech industry and the future of internet.
Yep.
What inspired you to
Oh, I never
take
had any
on?
doubts. I had no doubts whatsoever. Just like people are a little bit afraid of AI at the moment.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing. I see that repeating right now with AI, just what happened with the internet or the dot-com bubble, whatever you want to call it. It was very clear to me that this is the future. So I had absolutely zero issues about it. I knew this is what it's going to be, dove right into it.
So you are very much an advocate of AI as well.
Very much so, yeah.
What do you have to say to the naysayers who are rather nervous about AI development?
Look, I think with any piece of tech that comes along, starting from the calculator, right? I think back in the day, everyone used to do math in their head. And when a calculator came out, people started thinking, oh, wait a minute, what are we going to do? But it's a tool that helps us become better, faster, smarter, more efficient. AI is going to do exactly that.
That's fantastic. I give the same analogy to people I speak with as well.
Okay.
And I tell them, look, even when it comes to transportation, today we are
Yep.
in motorized transportation.
Absolutely.
We move from horses and camels to cars.
Yes, we did.
At the end of the day, it's part of development that must be embraced. And if you don't, eventually you'll be left behind in the development phase. So looking back now, all these challenges and similar challenges we face today as well, as you said, with the AI. But what were some of the key challenges you faced in professionally or personally in your endeavors and journey towards entrepreneurial journey?
Being kind of first to the game always has its disadvantages because people don't see the picture at that time. I think one of the things in hindsight that I look was back then it looked good, was we sort of joined a fund from Abu Dhabi, sort of invested in us. This was, I want to say, in 2004 or so, 2003,
Very early
2004.
on. Back
Very
then,
long
VC
time.
was not a thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, now that I look at it, I'm like, God, we sold ourselves a little bit cheap, didn't we? Considering the evaluations that people have had over the last decade or so.
Oh, yeah.
It's just one of those things that you come in a little bit earlier and then you don't really realize the full potential of it sometimes. That's always been the case with me.
So how did you overcome these challenges then?
You keep chugging along. That's always been my motto. Just keep chugging along. I mean, rain for whatever it is, rain or shine, just keep going. And yes, as long with any entrepreneur, I mean, I think the way I see it, that you are basically facing a new fire every single day. Every single day, there's a new challenge. And it's great for someone that likes that, but someone who kind of gets a little intimidated with that, it's not for you. I mean, I will say that right now. It's something that gives me a high at times, when there are things that are beyond my control and I'm like, crap, how am I going to get out of this? That challenge is something that pushes me forward. And I think one of the things that, especially in our culture, people are afraid to fail. I think failing is a fantastic thing because it teaches you so much. It teaches you a lot. And you take that and move forward with it.
It's interesting you bring the topic out of failure, but why do you think the culture exists of failure? Is it because certain systematic? Is it more
It's
cultural?
looked down upon. Yeah, I think in our culture, it's looked down upon. I think the problem with our culture is that if you fail, you're immediately branded a failure, unfortunately. That shouldn't be the case, in my opinion. I think failure is just a way to success. I think the lessons that you learn out of an outcome that wasn't desirable, they teach you a lot more than something that is. I mean, they really are great teachers of the direction you should head into, and you should really embrace them and move forward with that.
And that's a very noble thought. I mean, audience, one thing is certain. I mean, he's a generational entrepreneur who's continuing on the legacy of his forefathers as well. And just to highlight to the audience also and confirm this, I mean, you have not worked for a company in your life. I think from the very beginning onward, you were on your own.
Sure. So, I mean, look, I worked for my dad's company after college. So in college, I did a couple of internships, just very basic, very minimal. Cold calling, I think everyone's kind of gone through that.
You have to mop the floor.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone does that. But then coming back to Dubai, I was working for my father's company for some time. And during that, I sort of started Tea Break. I don't want to take all the credit for it. There were people in my life that sort of influenced and guided me towards it. I saw things working with people that suddenly made you go, aha, wait a minute, there is an opportunity over here. So yes, I mean, as far as being able or getting the experience from some of the top firms, etc., no, unfortunately, I haven't. I do have a good story about that, though. And it's it's one of those things that you kind of look back on and you wonder whether if that choice you would have taken had led you to some other path and whether that would have been a better path or not. So after I had started Tea Break, about, I want to say, 12 years back, this somewhere around 2011, 2012, I was offered the opportunity to launch the local office of NVIDIA in the region.
Wow.
So I used to work with NVIDIA back then,
Okay.
reviewing graphics cards and stuff like that, and got to know those guys really well as well. And they were looking to expand into the Middle East. And they were like, Abbas, why don't you join NVIDIA and, just launch the NVIDIA office from the region? I was like, nah, I'm happy where I am at the moment. And kind of looking back at it, where NVIDIA is now the third largest company in the world,
Absolutely.
right after Apple and Microsoft, it just makes me wonder, like, is that something that I could have, should have, how life would have turned out? Having said that, alhamdulillah, I'm absolutely very happy where I am right now.
Everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely,
I mean,
yes.
The opportunities missed also, we tend to focus on it, but what we don't focus on is what the opportunities taken.
That's true.
So, which also could have been missed, but you took them and you are where you are. So I think it's more about celebrating the success, the success stories.
Yep.
And you make decisions on the base of the best knowledge you have at the moment.
Totally
So
true. Totally
no one
true.
has a crystal ball. But yeah, NVIDIA today, it's one of the top three, even in terms of the most gains in year to date
Yep.
when it comes to market cap.
No, absolutely. They're fantastic. And look, the people heading that right now, I work with them. They're great people. I'm glad where the company is right now. But again, I think one of the things about me is I just hate working under someone else. It's just something I don't think I can ever kind of get myself to do that. I've got a very, I don't know, creative, open mind where looking at things and visualizing them and figuring out solutions for them tend to be different than what your corporate work culture is like. So I don't think I would have survived in that anyways.
But let's say
Yeah.
you get the autonomy you want
Mm-hmm.
with NVIDIA today.
Mm-hmm.
What will be our reaction?
Well, look, I think they're in a fantastic place right now. We just discussed AI, right?
Yeah.
And they are pioneering the tech side of AI. Almost every company that's working on AI is using processors that are designed by NVIDIA. So I think they have pivoted so well. Coming from me and NVIDIA go a long way back together. I started Tea Break as a tech website, and the first article that I ever did was comparing two graphics cards. One was by a company called 3DFX, which was dominant at that time. And the second thing was a newcomer to the market called NVIDIA with their card called Riva TNT. So that was the first article that I did comparing these two graphics cards, benchmarking them, which games played better in what kind of stuff. So I've followed NVIDIA since those days where they were a gaming company. And then they transitioned into a GPU which could compute, which led them to use in cryptocurrency mining. So they were fantastic with that. So if you were mining Bitcoin, Ethereum, or other cryptocurrencies, a GPU like NVIDIA gave you a massive, massive advantage over something from Intel or anything else. So they rode that wave. And then comes AI.
AI.
So
Yeah.
they have just, I don't know if it's luck or the genius behind Jensen Huang, who's the CEO. I've interviewed him as well when he was in Dubai almost 15 years ago as well. But it's just phenomenal where the company is at this time.
It's interesting you say how companies transition, right? And this is one of the key questions, especially in the entrepreneurship world, is that when you're embarking on a business, how important do you think is to have those 5-year, 10-year plans? Because we see today the world changing, it's on a monthly basis.
Absolutely.
And we've seen, for example, the example of NVIDIA went from gaming to GPU to AI-based company. So how important it is to hold your fort and try to master that or be agile with the waves as we
That's a good question.
Go through.
That's a good question. Look, I mean, I would say that get into something if you're passionate about it. Like you really need to be passionate about what you're getting into, and then always be open to change. You're absolutely right. It's good to kind of position yourselves and see where you might be 5 years from now, but don't be so hard and steadfast on that you're not willing to change. No, I think that would definitely kill you. Be open to change, be open to pivoting, because you will have to, for one way or the other.
But the
things
change as deep as redefining the entire business model?
Yes, be open to it. I'm not saying always do it, but be open to it. You might start with something, end up with something completely different. And I think it was Steve Jobs that once said that when you kind of look back, you can see how the dots connected. You can't see it moving forward. But when you actually look back at it, you actually see a very clear path of
Very
how
true.
they connected. So,
Very true.
so yes, absolutely, yeah.
It tells a lot about your leadership approach as well. So are you currently engaged with your company Tea Break?
Totally.
Okay. What kind of leadership style do you adopt in order to perhaps pass on the culture that you believe in, the agility, the
Right.
openness, open communication, and so forth? How do you?
Look, I'll tell you the way. Let me just explain the process of hiring someone, and that will kind of take you through the process of how the company works. Whenever there's a position that's open at Tea Break, the one thing I look at is I don't look at degrees. They hold absolutely zero value to me. I don't care how
It's a very
educated.
traditional approach now. No one looks at skills, but they look at qualifications.
No, I don't look
Doesn't
at your
tell you much.
qualifications whatsoever. I kind of look at how much passion you have for what I am hiring you to do. And if I see that in you, then I spend the first month or 2 or 3 training that person, sort of making sure that they understand how we work as a company and how they channel their passion into, or how they channel their energy into how I want them to grow out of it. And I think by 3 or 4 months down the road, when they've understood the process, I don't manage them. I let them self-manage themselves because they've understood what the company is about. They're passionate about what they do. And there is no 9 to 5 timing. There is no specific office that you need to show up. It's a very task-based job. This is what you need to get done. As long as it's done in the time that's supposed to be done, I really don't care whether you want to come into the office, work late nights, sleep during the day. I really don't care about that. Yes, there are certain positions when there are client meetings, etc., that are involved that require someone to be there. So don't get me wrong. There are people from our sales team that sort of understand that.
There needs to be a sense of flexibility.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right.
But then there are people that work on the back end that really can work anytime. They're very flexible. And I think the culture that we've sort of, not just as Tea Break, but globally, what we've seen is the world has become so connected that you're hiring people from different parts of the world to get a task done, a job done. And I really think that is the future of work, that's how it's going to be.
The future of work is a very big buzzword right now. So, audience, in case you are wondering which company we're talking about, that it is T-Break, letter T, BREAK.com. Please do visit, and the link will be on your screens below. Wonderful insights. Now, this approach to management, how has it served your company over the years? And have you been agile in terms of even changing the approach? Like that may be approach today. Was it from the very beginning? And how each approach has served your company towards its growth?
Sure. So like I said at the start, pivoting is important. When we started out doing what we were doing, which was purely tech from a media perspective, we still do that. That's an important part of what we do. But other than that, we also work with clients to produce content for them now. We also do events, and we've done massive gaming events in not just the UAE, but Saudi, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain. So really, really big events, to the point where at one point, the event we used to do in Bahrain called IGN Convention, that became the second most visited event in Bahrain after the F1. So it grew to that levels. We're not doing that, unfortunately, at the moment, but we do different events right now. So yes, I mean, the company does a lot more than it used to do. The other thing that is also very untraditional about me is that I'm not a money person. I don't chase after money. Money to me is nice to have, but it's not the end goal for me. I don't want $1 million or $1 billion in my bank account or whatever. I'm not that kind of person.
What drives you?
What drives me? My passion drives me. My passion of working drives me. I think money really has not much of an importance in my life.
It's a byproduct.
It's good to have. It's a
efforts.
byproduct, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's not nice to have. It's good to live a comfortable lifestyle, and I'm quite happy with the way I am right now. But money isn't something that necessarily drives me. It's the challenge of what I am interested in and how I can possibly achieve that is what sort of takes me where I want to go.
It's a very nice message as well. I mean, for aspiring entrepreneurs. From your leadership philosophy, and we all know, especially leadership in tech requires a good balance between innovation and execution.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the examples you'd like to share with us today for perhaps listeners who are aspiring entrepreneurs, be it in tech industry or otherwise,
right,
who could benefit from that?
Look, as far as execution is concerned, just do it. I mean, I've been guilty of planning and planning and planning.
Analysis paralysis.
Absolutely. I've definitely done that. And to the point where I've missed out things that I should have just gotten on it. Like just go. Fine. If we're not ready for it, not a problem. Just go. As long as you have an idea of where you want to start doing it. So it's very important to execute what you have in mind, because otherwise it's just going to be someone else who's going to take that idea. I mean, the world is very, very, very vast, and everyone is very connected. And there's a good chance that if you think of something and you don't act on it, somebody else will. I think the age of where you have an idea that's so unique to you is gone. I don't see that happening. So whatever you can think of, whatever opportunity is in front of you that you can make it happen as quickly as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't work on perfecting the idea. You'll never get there. You'll absolutely never get there.
But taking a step back, let's say today, when entrepreneurs go to obtain funding, either from angel investors, VCs, or otherwise, right? The first thing that is they're always questioned about and perhaps judged on is how polished their pitch is.
Right.
Now, how does that approach compare with what you're saying in terms of analysis paralysis?
Right.
Because I see that as inducing over analyzing things in order to perfect things.
So I think we went through that phase. I would say pre-COVID, we were at that phase that you're talking about, where everything needed to be super polished, super looked into, et cetera, et cetera. Then during these 2 or 3 years where everything sort of just took a very massive break and we returned to it, I think it's not always your business plan. I don't think that's the most important thing that you have right now. It's the person that you are that's more important. I think people now invest in a person, not an idea. So as long as you can show that you can get things done and do them, that's my advice. Like, just do them. That's what drives money now. That is my opinion of it.
Right. People invest in person, not the idea. It's key. I will definitely remember it from here as well. Now, you've clearly fostered a culture of innovation in your entity, and your company, alhamdulillah, has done great over the past number of years and continues to do so. So would you perhaps share how you fostered this culture of innovation? What are the underlying factors, perhaps, that was it a deliberate, strategically driven plan or so, or it just came about to be? How did you embed innovation, a culture? Because you've spoken about the company culture and how you see, perhaps, how you recruit, even the recruitment process.
You know what? I think most of my learnings and implementing of those has been seeing what I feel doesn't work, which has more or less been the traditional way of working. I mean, I see it, and I see corporations doing things and, turning great profits at the end of the day. But not always, employees aren't always happy, I think I saw that a little early into it. And I think the well-being of your employees is super important. Now, obviously, as a company, there are only certain limits that you can kind of go into, right? If my sales guy comes in and says he loves a Ferrari, I'm not going to go out and buy him a Ferrari. but little things that you can do for them. I think their happiness is very important, because then that leads them to do work with all their dedication. And then that sort of drives, your company ahead with it. Again, these are things that I've seen not working many times, and then that's made me question, and then that's made me sort of implement. I'm always super open to trying new things. And look, I mean, not everything works, right? I mean, there have been times when things don't work. So yeah, but as long as you're sort of looking into trying to figure out what could potentially work for you, and then sort of trying to do that, whether that works out or not is something you only find out after you've done it. I think there's definitely a lot of missteps that have led to the company where it is at right now as well. I don't want to say that everything that we've done has been hunky-dory. I mean, and it's still the case, right? I mean, there's still days when you suddenly wake up and you realize, oh wait, what happened over here? And I'll give you another example of this, which just happened last week, and I'm still trying to figure out how to sort of work on this. So, um, 2 years back, up until 2 years, we were actually the licensee for a company called Future Publishing in the UK that publishes Tech Radar, which is one of the largest websites in the world. Almost 2 years, year and a half, 2 years back, they decided to pull out of not just the Middle East market, but some of the other markets where they have the English version of their websites, India as well being one of them, which was a huge market for them. It was a company-wide decision that they took. So we were sort of left wondering at that time because almost all of our energies had gone into developing Tech Radar into the region for the last 4 or 5 years before that. And it was at a place where it was pretty much the leading tech website in the region. We worked with every single manufacturer you could think of. And then bam, suddenly, I got the call saying that, guys, sorry, but this is something that the company's decided and it's not going to be with you anymore. So we were sort of left in a panic as to how do we sort of tackle this. And then we thought about it, and then we decided to relaunch the website Tea Break, which was something that I started almost 20 years ago. And almost a year back, we relaunched Tea Break. And up until last week, when you look at not just the work that we sort of put into Tea Break, but also the traffic and sales and stuff, you see a decent rise. You can see the graph sort of going up. Last week, Google, what they do is that every month they update their algorithms for search. Okay. And when they do that, some websites suffer the brunt of it. This time, we suffered that. And almost in a day, our traffic went from, let's say, from 100% down to 20%. Oh, we lost 80% of our traffic, 80% of the search traffic. So up until last week, there was a good chance that if you're searching for the best phone to buy in the UAE or the best TV to buy in the UAE, Tea Break would come in number 1, number 2, number 3. And now we're not even the top 100. So it's just one of those things where I'm struggling to sort of find out what happened. Why were we penalized for this from Google? There's a lot of learning that I've had to go through over the last week or so. And it's not just me. I mean, this was an update that has affected hundreds or thousands of websites. So I'm just trying to figure out what do we do to sort of get back into that. And there are multiple options in front of me. And again, it's also a case of, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I do this? It's a constant learning process. So I, as an entrepreneur, or at least the way that I look at things, you've never won the battle. It just keeps going on. And every day there's a new challenge. There are people that, love that when they reach a certain point, they sell the company, they IPO, they raise whatever. I've never been that person. For me, this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And whatever challenges sort of lie in front of me, and there always are. So you're never at a comfortable place, because when you are, just like we were with Tech Radar, life shows you that there's one little thing that comes across that's completely unexpected.
Sure.
And then just completely throws you back down at a level where you were 10 years before that, 5 years before that. And then the struggle of climbing back up to that level is something I love. I love doing that.
That's very interesting. I mean, I was going to talk about setbacks a little later, but you brought it up in a very elaborate and best way. Challenges in anything is true, right? And life is not hunky-dory at all.
Absolutely not.
Whether you see it in your professional or personal life, is always a roller coaster. It's more about enjoying the ride, because all the loops that you go through, by the time when the ride ends, it's all worth it.
Yep.
And I think, as you said, it is a constantly going process. It's a going concern. You do not come to an end of it until you decide that this is it, and I won't be going forward more with it. But
it's never about the destination. It's always about the journey.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very, very well put.
Yeah.
Looking at it from perspective of, let's say, future, right? we've seen, especially with the advent of ChatGPT, it came out in 2021. It was a big hoo-ha,
Yep.
and after that, no one has looked back. And
Yep.
things are gone to a level where we have videos being developed by also
Absolutely.
ChatGPT or Sora,
Sora,
for
right?
example.
OpenAI, yeah.
And but how do you see the evolution of tech from here, and how important it is, or what kind of innovation perhaps organizations today, such as yours, need in order to keep up?
I think we kind of need to learn the tools of the trade one more time with AI coming in. So with us as media, so going back to when we started Tea Break, right? This was almost 20 years ago. I was in a position to start something that was completely new at that time, which was the web format. Traditional manufacturers such as newspapers and magazines and stuff like that, they were kind of stuck into that old way of doing things. Whereas I was kind of lucky enough to just start with something that was a completely new tech. And I kind of developed that and had good success with it. I think over the last, then what did we switch after that? We switched to videos after that and social media. So that was sort of a learning phase for us because the influencers that you see, they started at that time. So they had the advantage of starting something completely new at that time, realizing what it is and taking that forward. Whereas we sort of had to unlearn a few things and then relearn things to sort of settle into the social media space. We did that. We're doing that quite okay. AI is exactly that phase now, one more time, where we're going to have to unlearn some things that we already know and sort of learn new things on how we sort of implement this to take things forward from a business perspective. There's a lot to learn over here, but there's a lot of opportunity over here as well. I think if you can take the time to, I'm not going to say understand how this works because this is still developing very rapidly, but if you can understand the concepts of how these things work, I think you've got a bright future ahead of you. You mentioned Sora, right, for example, and the videos that it creates. And this tool hasn't even been released yet. OpenAI has showcased that you just prompt something and it does a video for you. ChatGPT, you prompt something and it creates something for you. You've got, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of the image generation tool as well, DALL-E and others that you prompt. Yeah. So I think prompt engineering is going to be something that people should look into. It should be a skill that almost everyone should have, I think, along with some programming knowledge. So I think in schools now, that is something that we sort of need to teach our children, because the way you create and manipulate data around you, it's going to be very important going in the future. So I would say that if there are two things that you should be prepared for is prompt engineering for sure. I think coding has been for the last 10, 12 years. We've sort of
we've been hearing about it, yeah.
Absolutely.
And the universities offer it as a major as well nowadays.
Absolutely. Yeah. But then learning to engineer those prompts are something that you should really be looking at.
Do you think it should be a major of its own, a degree of its own?
I think it will. I think it will become into that. I think it will definitely turn into that. It's kind of like when computers were very early on. You didn't really have computer science as a degree because it was difficult to sort of, we live in a very different world today where access to computers is very different 40 years ago. Everyone has access to a computer in their pocket now.
Right.
So I think it will be a lot faster, the progression of learning these things that are related to AI. But yeah, I think that's definitely going to be something.
Do you think we are ready as today's common men, let's say as human beings, ready to accept and integrate AI into our daily lives? So there's one thing, AI readiness, but do we have the human readiness?
It always takes a generation, doesn't it? With anything that's so mind-bogglingly, I mean, you look at the internet, right? There were a lot of fears about the internet as well. I'm not sure if you were old enough to sort of realize when that happened.
I'm humbled that you said I was young. So
no, I mean, okay, look, something that you might remember, Y2K. I don't know if you remember the fears around, right? Like planes are going to fall out of the sky, our banks are going to go down to zero, blah, blah, blah. nothing happened.
Yeah.
Nothing really happened. I think the fear of unknown with humans is something that has always been and will always be. Tech will continue evolving, and I think AI is sort of at that stage where we're fearing it right now, but by the time the next generation comes into play, it's going to be such a part of their daily lives that you're not going to even think about why we were afraid of it. There will be people that will always be similar to flying. People are still afraid of flying. There are some
Yeah.
people that are, and I can well imagine the time when planes were first introduced. A lot of people would have been very scared to get on one, but now it's the norm. We don't even think about it. There are a few people that are still afraid of flying, my wife included. But it's just something that is very natural to us. We don't even think about it. So similarly, I think AI will be something that will be. It's going to be a generational leap, and it's going to exist in almost everything that we do, from our personal to professional life, and we'll completely learn to sort of live with it. It's not going to be something to be scared of. It's just going to enhance your productivity. It's going to enhance your the way you deal with time. It's going to have a lot of time for you to do things that today we might not, just like calculators did back in the days, where what would take maybe 10 minutes, 12 minutes to solve cannot be solved in nanoseconds. So it's going to be the same case with AI.
I shared this story with a lot of people as well when I first went to study, and my first class, I believe it was a math class, and I entered, and the professor just wrote an equation on the board, and he said to everyone, without saying hi, hello to anybody, he was like, solve.
Mm-hmm.
And I started solving from my hands, because that's what we were, we graduated understanding how mathematics works manually, right? And I took a few minutes to do it, but when I was done, I look around and everyone was far done before me. And then the professor comes up to me and is like, why didn't you use a calculator?
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, no, but I know how to solve it without one. He said, when you have technology, make use of it. And that stuck to my head. And he said, look, everything is a stepping stone. If you continue to step on the ground, you'll never see ahead. Use these stepping stones to climb on them to see further down. And that analogy resonated.
That's a
with
great
me.
way of looking at it.
Yeah. Until today, I remember that lesson, and I don't know where the professor is at the moment, but I remember him in good thoughts all the time. So you're absolutely right. Now, with all this change that you see, and perhaps I would say change is perhaps a very soft word, but transformation or complete revolution of how people work, of future of work, of technology. How are you making your organization, tbreak.com, future ready?
I'm not. I'll be brutally honest with you. I'm not. These things change so quickly that I don't think I'm in a position to do that right now, because I don't want to sort of put my eggs in a basket that might not even be a basket, right? I mean, it's just something that
It's a good way of seeing things.
Yeah, you take things as they go. I mean, who would have thought pre-COVID that AI would sort of come into our lives in such a way that it has? And, I'm not saying that it's completely changed our way of doing things, but it has the potential to do so. And, we're at the very early stages of it, and we can see it now. We can kind of see this happening, whereas 3 years back, we couldn't see it happening. So again, to answer your question, no, I'm absolutely not ready for whatever comes next. It's just something that I need to take one step at a time, just to kind of figure out where we are, what we can do that we currently have, and where does that take us. And depending on where that does take us, then decide on what to do next.
That's a very, very different way of leadership, I see, but and very humble as well. Very few perhaps would be openly admitting that I'm not working towards it. It's more about because the pace of change is so fast. Perhaps it is the right thing to do, because
Maybe.
it turns out then what if you jump on the bandwagon too soon and the entire trajectory is different?
Absolutely, yes.
Not right.
Absolutely.
It's really enlightening. Now, through this journey, some of the valuable lessons, let's say top 3 valuable lessons you've learned in your entire entrepreneurial journey from day one till today, and that you'd like to share with us?
Gosh, that question is kind of hard because
I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah.
One lesson.
no, it's just that the one thing that unfortunately I've lost on is my memory's not as sharp as it used to be. I think with age, it's just a part of it, unfortunately.
It's just too
so-
much happening. Don't worry.
Absolutely. And so there was a YouTube video that I recently saw about a 30-year-old book, a practice that I've never done in my life. But I mean, when I read that and I was like, okay, this sort of makes sense. So I went ahead and ordered the book. And it's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I hope I remember that correctly.
Okay.
And one of the things that it tries to teach you is that every morning when you wake up, write 3 pages of whatever's in your head. Offload.
3 pages.
3 pages. Offload. And if you can't think of anything to write, just write, I can't think of anything to write. I can't think of anything to write. I can't think of anything until those 3 pages are complete. It's a way of unloading your mind. Now, that idea fascinates me because I think there is so much information that we are absorbing on a daily, hourly basis that even though this is a concept that's 30 years old, I want to say when the internet got popular or social got popular, obviously, is something that resonated with me. And I'm reading the book at the moment. It's something that I feel I could potentially use on a daily basis and see where it takes me. Look, I mean, the one thing that I will say is that life is a constant learning. It's a constant learning, right? Never stop doing that. Never be fearful to change. Change is inevitable. It will come into your lives. Be open to it, embrace it, and learn from it. Be open to changing yourself with it, because honestly, that's the only way I think we will survive, not just you and me as humans, but, just as the world goes on.
That's very deep. Very, very deep. Thinking of it. Now I'm thinking.
Oh.
It's all about looking at also holistically and being realistic about things. A lot of times we are so involved in the race, we forget what we're missing. And again, we were talking about missed opportunities and taken opportunities.
Yep.
What we don't look at is what actually came in our basket and how we, optimized those opportunities. But we always focus on what I didn't do or what we didn't do.
Yeah.
But it's so that thought is definitely something to think deeper about, and I'm going to do that right after this show. Now, coming to an end, last perhaps question towards you. With all these changes happening, and especially in the tech world, it's crazy out there in terms of the pace of change. I remember in 2004, or was it 2005, someone told me in a conversation that, the pace of change is so fast that 4,000 pages are being written every hour. And that was back then. Right. And either I read it somewhere or I was speaking to someone, but that was the figure. And I can only imagine the development speed and pace has exponentially grown, even if you take that number as a number to be at that moment.
So let me just put that into perspective, right? You said thousands of pages per day. We're at a point where thousands of hours of videos are being produced every second on YouTube. So, just kind of putting things in perspective, thousands of pages per day to thousands of videos per second.
We encapsulated time as well. It's phenomenal in terms of where we've come, especially since the pandemic. I mean, the pace has been much faster, but nonetheless, the AI has been existent from before the pandemic times, and it just came to the public sphere later, and that's what even accelerated things further. Otherwise, back in 2005, if you would be sitting and thinking something like this would happen today, you couldn't imagine. We were using Nokia phones back then.
Yep, absolutely.
Right, and those colorful, we were happy with the cameras, and today we do podcasts even on phones as well. So it's remarkable. your advice to aspiring entrepreneurs about, let's say, the opportunities and pitfalls, or how to be resilient, or so forth, in last 30 seconds.
Okay, look, work is important, right? Work is super important, and it's great to be resilient towards it. But family is also super important. Take time to spend with your family. Take time to sort of just be by yourself, observe things, look at things, think about, where is it that you're headed, and how much time is that going to take away from you, from your family, towards putting into it. So don't forget that. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of people in COVID and in recent times.
Sure.
Don't take that for granted. Never take that for granted. So work is important, but your personal life is equally important. So just make sure you care about that too.
And that's really, really good thought. I mean, we all have been in the past, post-COVID or pre-COVID as well. What we tend to regret then is, had I had more time,
Absolutely,
I would have done this with him or her, and so forth, be it your parents, your siblings, or anyone in that equation. But absolutely, these things don't come back. Everything else can be
absolutely
pushed back. Great. Well, thank you very much for being on HassanSpeaks.
Been a pleasure.
And, on my show.
It's been a pleasure.
We look forward to welcoming you again and learning from you. There's a lot more to learn from you, which cannot be done in the hour we spent today together.
Yeah, appreciate you having me over here, Hassan. It was a pleasure talking to you as well.
Very much. Thank you very much, audience, for viewing our show. And please do not forget to visit teabreak.com. Mr. Abbas is the founder of that website and the business, and it's been operating for over 20 years. Yeah. So please do have a look at it, and thank you. Have a wonderful evening ahead and a wonderful day.